let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to go and open the level that I need. You can see we've started where we left off on the Thursday session. We've got a scene here which is exploring the use of emissive lights. As a recap, emissive lights are materials that emanate, or emit, I should say, materials that emit its own light, useful for creating objects like lamps, halogen tubes, or neons. It's very tricky to select this. There we go. So yeah, quite useful for that. And also I used on the texture over here to make that a little bit more glowy, for use of a better term. So the other thing we looked at in the session was using the built-in geometry within Unreal and using the texture map or texture coordinate multiplier to manipulate the scale of the textures that were added to the scene using the video that Jamie has published. We'll also go through that a little bit here as well, just to give an overview. Alright, so what am I going to do first? Let's build a new scene, I suppose. So in the levels folder, right click, make a new level, call this emissive 2 and open that scene. Not going to bother saving. Okay, so we're now in the level, there's absolutely nothing in there. I'm going to go to my actors and drop in a basic cube. And I'm also going to drop in a directional light, just so I can see what's going on. And I can scale this object using R on the keyboard. Or I could even use the scale parameters in the details window at the bottom right. So the default object itself is 1 unit, so we can assume that that is 1 meter. So if I was to scale this, I could make that 15 by 10 by 0.3, and that would give me a 15 by 10 meter rectangle, which is 30 centimeters in depth, 300 mil. Now if I want to focus on that object, I can press F on the keyboard. I can navigate things around. Perfect. So 15 by 10, what I can do here is I can add a few more cubes and scale accordingly. 15, no, that'd be 10, 10 by 0.3 by 4 meters tall. Nice size walls. And when I've got a scene this large, I want to increase the camera speed. Off we go. Quickly smoosh the walls together. That's going to be 0.3. That's the wrong way around. Okay, Alt to select and drag. Don't really like that light, so I'm going to go back to my world outliner and select that directional light, nuke it, and drop in a basic point light. There we go, it's a little bit more friendly on the eyes. Okay, so now I actually want to, as my last example, I want to go in and put a opening or maybe a window in this end elevation, and with the default objects you are unable to do that. If I was to drop in a basic shape, a cube, nothing happens, it just, is a random object. The way that we can get around that is by going into the Geometry tab, Box, drop the box in. Again, it is a 1 meter cube. I can make that, I can't remember the values now. And this seems to scale both sides from the centre. Delete that box behind it and just drop that into place. Freehand scale. Okay, so one of the things that we can do here is, can't actually see that geometry very well. Okay. Just bring that in. Alright. Yeah, we can have an opening in this window by dropping in another box from geometry and scaling that accordingly. Again, if this was 1 meter, then we know that that is going to be about 0.9 for a nice wide door. That's going to be, doesn't matter about the thickness of that, the depth and the height is going to be 1.9. Get a nice large aperture. And this way, what we can do now is go down the details and choose brush settings subtractive, and wherever this object is creates an opening. Let's copy that over, rotate, and we can actually have that as our window there. Fantastic. Okay, now materials. We can drop these in. Just use the starter content. And we can drop in some materials. Now the problem with this is that because we scaled our planes, our materials have scaled accordingly as well, which don't make for the nicest finish. And on the geometry you have to actually go in and drop those materials on all the faces that are visible. Like so. Okay, I can rebuild the scene. Nice and fast. Okay, so if we want to go in there, we can go and finish modifying the UV tiling based on the other video, and in here we might want to start dropping in some of those emissive materials that we've talked about already. So the process for doing that is when you're in the materials folder, you can create a new material. You can find a place to actually select that. New asset. So right click on the materials folder, new asset, material, and this is going to be called emissive. Let's give it a blue. And at the moment that's just made a basic material object, and I'm going to give that to a cube in the scene. I can double click on that material and we get the base material objects here. And just like when we were creating our texture coordinate, our own textures earlier, a few things we need to do. The first thing we're going to do is press and hold 3 on the keyboard and click, and that gives us our 3 vector RGB, and I'm going to drop that into the base colour. I'm going to press 3 again and click, and I'm going to drop that into our emissive colour. And I need a few parameters, so just some single vectors. So I'm going to choose 1 on the keyboard and click. I'm going to right click on that and do convert to parameter. I'm going to title that a boost. I'm going to do that again with a 1 and click, and I'm going to call this, once I've done convert to parameter, I'm going to call that roughness, or rough. Okay, I'm going to drop roughness into roughness, and basically what I need to do is multiply this colour, given the name of the material, is going to be blue, a nice bright blue, and I need to boost this colour with this value. So if I put the value as 1 as default, that will be timesing it by itself. Again, if I was to go to 2, I'll be multiplying that emissive colour by 2, 3, 4, etc. So here I need to do M on the keyboard for multiply, M and click. So I'm actually going to drop that into A. I'm going to drop this into B, and then I'm going to put the output into emissive colour. And again, that roughness is going to be set to 0.5. Apply. Okay, so the base colour is, in this project, going to be very bright white. So the actual object itself is going to look pretty luminous, even before the boost is clocked. Okay, so save, close, and drop that on here, and you can see, even if I kill this guy, the scene itself hasn't been illuminated fully yet, but we are getting a few reflections in that metallic and the polished materials on the wall here. A few things we need to change. Well, let's build it, see what happens. Okay, not too much. I need to select the box or the object. In the details panel on the right hand side, I need to scroll down to lighting and open that. I need to choose use emissive for static lighting and then rebuild. Okay, are we seeing any difference? If I said yes, oh yeah, we are, look around here. This wasn't there before. Now we can actually increase that value even further. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create an instance of this material. And this material instance is created by right clicking. Top option is create material instance. Open that up with a double click, and I can actually select boost and rough. So they were the parameters that I made on the scene prior. So if you look at this guy, we can change what this shape is, so sphere or cube, let's say, let's best represent the geometry in the scene. And I can choose boost, and it will create a brighter, more intense light. Now, you don't really need to go much higher than 2 on this guy, because we're going to do another boost in another option down here later on. But the roughness is our gloss. So a value of 1 is going to be very rough, very matte. Most lights are made of glass, so not necessarily, but if you've got maybe a diffused LED strip, you might want the roughness to be about 0.8, so you've got that nice kind of diffused acrylic. Whereas if you've got a bulb, maybe you go down to 0.2, so it will actually start reflecting light around the space. So I can do a save there, and obviously I can drop that material onto the object so we can see that boost updating in real time, which is pretty exciting. So again, I'm going to leave that to 2, save. I did mention we've got another emissive boost on the actual object itself. So this is going to work a little bit more efficiently on our render times and our rebuild. So I'm going to choose, you could go all the way up to 8 on this. I think that would make it pretty intense, depending on the scale of your object. Let's do a rebuild, see if this is making any difference in our scene. It certainly is. Quite dramatic, in fact. Now the only problem with this, if it is a problem, is that it doesn't work when the lights are set to be movable or stationary. It only works with static lights. So once you've baked it, you cannot move your object. Okay, otherwise if you do move your object, you need to rebuild the lights again. Depending on your complexity of the scene, that could be a problem. Now for this, maybe 8 is what you want. I'm going to choose 4 and see how that affects my space. Yeah, a lot more subtle when it's on 4. Okay, final thoughts then. Very useful tool to manipulate the space with a light, make the object itself appear to be glowing. Very useful for, as I said, neons or strip lights. And one other thing we can look at here is using that same emissive multiplier, but using a texture sample instead of a 3-vector. And that texture sample, again, is using any image. And wherever it can, it will be making that object appear to be brighter. So if I was to drop that on, save that wall, this is without, well, this is with a intensive boost. Let's see, and that is the instance. Yeah, we can make that, as an image appear to be brighter. So it could be great for like a billboard-sized object, or even a photograph on the wall, like it was in the previous example. Okay.